I'm very happy to have spent the day with you all, and we continue right away our program with our last act, and I'm very happy that you're here to share that with us. As I told you before, the wardrobe is closing at 6 o'clock. If you still have something there, you should probably hurry there. I would like to introduce to you our last act for the conference, which is a more experimental, it's not a lecture performance as it says in the fold, but it's more of a dialogue. And this dialogue is performed, maybe I wait just a couple of seconds so that I do it. This dialogue is performed by two artists and curators, Yvonne Reiners and Christina Kral. Yvonne Reiners is a curator, and she organizes a series of experimental participatory performances called Performing Encounters here in Berlin, very often at places such as KW or Grimm Museum. I participated in one myself. It's really, really intense, very interesting. And she was just this week awarded with a working grant for this project. She is educated in fine art from the University of Arts Braunschweig, and she currently works on a thesis at HFBK Hamburg about performativity in contemporary art education and artistic practice. Christina Kral is also an artist based in Berlin, and she says that through experimental models of facilitation and collaboration, she promotes alternative forms of knowledge production. In addition to that, she's part of the artist collective Ykon and of the interdisciplinary research group Hybrid Publishing Consortium. Their lecture today refers to a man that we have heard about this morning, to Buckminster and thanks to Aoife Dyer's great introduction talk, we know a bit about Buckminster already. The title of their lecture is Everyone Must Win, Buckminster World Game, and it refers to the problem-solving educational game that the architect and Black Mountain tutor Buckminster embedded in his work. A large part of the game was its integrating function to facilitate an access to collaboration for students. And Reiner and Kral will reflect on Foller's vision and have a critical dialogue about past, present, and possibly future experimental forms of education, knowledge production, and artistic practice. So, welcome Christina Kral and Yvonne Reiners.
You're well. Thank you for the invitation and the nice opportunity to reflect on education via Buckminster Fuller's World Game. As Annalena Werner kindly have introduced already, we both conduct practice-based research on learning. Christina from an artistic point of view, and myself from a curatorial side, as we like to approach to our topic in a way that allows space for your imagination. We prepared a visual tour that will run parallel to our talk. We were told that not many people are familiar with Buckminster Fuller, the Ethiopian thinker, maker, and architect, and his work. I can assure you we are no experts either. Fuller's work is very comprehensive. He's a grateful subject, however. He has produced so many insights that one can just pick out something and start from there. That's why I would like to start with some quotes that will give you an initial idea of Buckminster Fuller's thoughts. I always start with the universe. Make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time through spontaneous cooperation without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. All the beds in the bedrooms around the world are empty, 2/3 of all time. All the automobiles are empty and motionless, 5/6 of the day. There are two main causes for this vast usefulness. Firstly, we try to do everything at peak loads. Secondly, we try to own too many objects that we use too infrequently to justify this ownership. Don't fight forces, use them. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Or the best known quote, think global, act local. Out of these innovative thoughts and working principles, Buckminster Fuller created a game, the so-called World Game, in 1961.
Hi. Buckminster Fuller's World Game, originally called the World Peace Game, it might be one of the lesser-known works of his, but according to Fuller, it's one of the most important contributions to society. And he created the World Game as an alternate system of education, a game rather than a curriculum as the main platform for learning. And it would last sometimes as long as a semester or even longer. It was a logistic game of how to distribute the Earth's resources. Fuller understood that we live in an integral and interdependent ecological system, and that includes problems that we produce ourselves, but also thriving for solutions. The World Game was intended to manifest the conditions and global interaction, and he used computer simulation to make the consequences of decisions transparent to all. So just to imagine it briefly how it was set up, you have the players, or the students in this case, you have a giant map, sometimes on the wall, but also imagined hugely and vastly on the floor, and you have a computer that provides the global data which the students had to work with. And it is played by trying to generate the best strategies for improving living conditions for all of Earth's inhabitants. The participants had to develop their own concept of how to distribute on the globe the natural resources, the energy, the population, the means of transportation and means of communication and so forth. And as the name of the project says, world, you have to imagine we had to think big scale. All the changes had to be considered on a vast canvas, and a sort of planetary consciousness. And in the original world, the title, the World Peace Game, the peace meant it was indicating the goal. It was meant to make everyone win and to make it work for everyone. And to imagine the best possible future. And the word game simply, he called it such to lower the threshold of participation, to really say everyone can participate and it's not just for the elite few who already run the show. And Buckminster Fuller had developed a map that he used for the playground, and it's called the Dymaxion Map. Am I too loud? No, it feels kind of big. He was determined to solve the dilemma of cartography, and therefore designed a map that was suited to represent the global data and its relationships. And after the participants had developed this concept of how to fix the world, it was like they were working with the data, and it was the results were projected with a laser onto the Dymaxion Map immediately to showcase the consequences of what their proposals would have on the rest of the world. And Fuller very early understood that having access to global data and live information changes meant power. He established an inventory of the world's vital statistics, where all the resources were at, in what quantities they were available, and what qualities. And he tried to make it as comprehensive and as accurate as possible. He envisioned that an information source that monitored the current state of the world would bring vital news into the game space, and it would bring it to their life. But Fuller conceived the World Game in a time when electronic networks such as the internet were not a daily reality. And although he anticipated some of the later developments, Fuller's World Game of the 60s suffered from a lack of real-time data, image streams, global communications, and across borders and other digital tools. And maybe let's look at the world map one more time. And Buckminster Fuller tried to use all the technical means he had available at the time to show with lasers the new information layer that the players created on top, and to showcase the global coherences and the consequences.
Yeah, that's right. And as you already said, Buckminster Fuller tried to depict the spherical world, not as a flat surface, but as dimensional, as lifelike. He tried to show the world with true scale, with true directions and correct configurations. Little excurse. When Google started in 2008 to map the world, the internet was flooded with strange anomalies. Buildings, streets, or entire cities disappeared. Coastline and mountain ranges warped, highways kinked and buckled. That was caused, of course, by glitch-ridden software and failing collating techniques. But to dismiss this as a uniquely 21st century phenomenon, a digital quirk, would be to overlook an essential feature of all maps, namely that they don't work and never have. Maps are not copies, they are always projections. Projections are never neutral, natural, never given. They are constructed, configured, underpinned by various conventions. And yet, explicitly or not, all maps carry with them a certain claim that this one is somehow truer than the others. They depict the territory in a more penetrative, personalized, intimate, or nuanced way. The fantasy that lies behind all cartography is that of seeing space deeply, totally, or really. But we must live in the liminal space, in the gaps between the mappable. Fuller's idea was to visualize reality, but, and he understood that very well, also meant projection on utopia. Maps produce new realities, much as they seek to portray the current ones. Maps are always going beyond the space-time of the present. That is, of course, inherent in one of Fuller's principles as well: anticipate the future. To map the world always means to create the world, and this production of realities contains the potential for further or other knowledge. Another beautiful problem with maps is that it is very difficult to make an image of a city, because of the moment one sees it, it has changed already. That means that mapping always must be a process, like creative production always is a process, something that the situationists understood well in the concept of the dérivé. The 21st century dérivé, in turn, can merely be a spatio-temporal drift through urban landscapes. 21st century dérivé means a drift through the spaces of the imagination in order to arrive at an invention or innovation of reality. That meets again a Buckminster Fuller principle. He always started from where he stands, but he was able to generate vision and see the roots of things he thought comprehensively. But this all sounds quite contemporary to you, doesn't it? So I've shown plenty of contemporary artistic approaches to cartography during the last minutes. This last picture here veers from beautiful to terrifying. It was not created by an artist, but by Google's image recognition neural network, which has been taught to identify features such buildings, animals, and objects in photographs. So this one is one that was taught to see in a black space landscapes. The slide in was just meant as a reminder that we live in an age of rapid changes, as Buckminster Fuller had already foreseen. Another Fuller quotes might define it more. Man is going to be displaced altogether as a specialist by the computer. Man itself is being forced to re-establish, to employ, and enjoy his innate comprehensivity. Coping with the totality of spaceship Earth and universe is ahead for all of us. We've already found out that we can discover many of Buckminster Fuller's thoughts in contemporary and participatory artistic practice, and they resonate in contemporary education as well, even if we speak about machines that are able to learn. As this symposia is about education and artistic approaches to it, we decided to discuss some contemporary examples for learning through games. Christina, perhaps you can start with your own example of the Ykon game. that anticipate the future by creating scenarios, not necessarily through problem solving, but by changing the way of thinking and asking different questions.
Here? No? Oh yeah, no, it does. Yeah, the Ykon game is deeply inspired by Buckminster Fuller's World game. It takes on a slightly more poetic and absurd approach to it. Maybe also briefly a setup, just shortly, it brings the entire world to a complete halt, and all the players, they can tinker with the world as they please and they can change it. And after they have come up with their changes, the world gets set back into motion and you see about the consequences. And the immediate goal of the Ykon game is to function as a catalyst for utopian thinking. Instead of solving the common problems that we are facing, the game seeks to uncover ideas and novel scenarios that have not yet been considered. And they can sometimes be beautiful or exciting, but they can also be terrifying. And the game has proven to be a vital tool to engage with people in unconventional ways. We assume that the Ykon game, as many other reality games, is like a life plus. So it presents life as it is with the additional element of fiction. And here, art, in contrast to design, doesn't need to fix things. It doesn't need to solve any problems. So where Fuller set out to envision the best possible future, we welcome also, as I said, like dark ideas or nasty ideas. And we discovered that sometimes a twisted or mean idea can unleash a certain degree of creativity than staying too close to the problem at hand. It just is a freeing mechanism.
But can you explain a bit further, how does that work exactly? What does it take to get into a big scale mindset? Because not everybody is enabled to think about the world differently.
Yeah, Buckminster always took on a wide-angle view. So, like the quote you said in the beginning, I always start with the universe. Like with every problem, he wanted to frame it in the widest possible sense, like spaceship Earth. Like he really zoomed out. But not everyone can, and not in every situation you're not able to think specifically. So we have noticed that it takes a certain kind of form and a certain kind of facilitation to get into that mind space. When you ask people, how do you want to change the world, and you ask them unprepared, you usually get the same answers. You want to end starvation, you want to have world peace, you want to fight crime, like really noble and great things, but they're at the same time, as great as they are overwhelming. And who wants to encourage, or who feels to be encouraged to take on such a challenge and think it through and consider the consequences. So to think comprehensively and to envision a future, you need to enter a space where this is possible, where you can be different and where you can break with your own routines and your think patterns. We started developing the game in a way that it takes you on a journey to experience these changes, so that you can safely but also absurdly change the way of thinking, and through that maybe consider different views or different perspectives.
Wasn't Fuller convinced that instead of trying to change people's behavior, it might be the better solution to change the environment this people lives in? And because you're talking about behavior, you can maybe say some words about this future as well.
Oh yeah, this is maybe just an insert. It's a PMD, a portable personal modification device, and it's portable. So you can either, we have a dart version where you go by chance and you throw the dart and whatever hits, this is your personality for the day. And it's funny, and we sometimes realize that people keep coming back to throwing darts because they're not happy with the choice, even though they said, I don't really care. But because it is powerful if you just consider it. I mean, if you just, today I want to be risky, what does it do to you every day? I mean, and if you just, and we have also a portable version, so you can change that personality and get a bit schizophrenic over a day, but it's a small exercise, and it is a first step that puts something in motion.
Thank you so much. And the question by me was, maybe it's sometimes better to change the environment of the people instead of asking them to change their behavior at once.
Yeah, I mean, you will change behavior only if you have a better experience. That's just it. I mean, you know, like everyone has, how do you call that, gute Vorsätze? Usually you don't do anything about that, but if you have a better experience, because I mean, behavior is so ingrained in you, and it grew so long that you actually have to have something better to change, and not for better reason or because it makes sense. And Fuller also mentions that you should take individual action, and what Irit said before, not to wait for permission, and you should take action. That's also important. And Ykon is convinced, or we as Ykon are convinced, that the change starts with the individual realizing that it can change. And it starts with the first tiny step, as I mentioned, or like the personality modification device. And a game can help to ignite that process and encourage that first step. That's the idea. And with all the restrictions and rules, the game generates a space of freedom and creativity. With the game, we create a set of practical tools. So first, we facilitate this journey, that you can come up with these crazy scenarios that are bigger than life. And then in the second part, we also have to, once you have established those scenarios, to close the game, we have to filter them into action steps. So once the game is over, you feel inspired and with momentum, and you can do something right after without being a utopianist. That's it.
But do we really learn something by playing games, and what exactly do we learn?
I think we do learn a lot, and I will use another example than Ykon. I will use one that I got really excited about. It's a New York public school called Quest to Learn, and it runs entirely on playing games, and it uses gameplay as a critical design and educational tool. So the students, they play games, but they also make games, and they engage in system thinking. And it was developed, as far as I understood it, out of the need to better engage with the students of today, and to generate this need to know, the need to know something. And it also said, okay, we need to go with the time and teach skills that are called for today, and expertise. And their claim is to prepare the students for future challenges and to thrive in the 21st century. So let me read this to you from the Quest to Learn Glossary of Gaming Literacies, which is interesting, also always in relation to Buckminster Fuller. Gaming literacies is a set of skills, tools, and dispositions that come from the design, culture, and play of games, such as the ability to build worlds, to act with dynamic systems, to navigate complex information networks, and to engage in collaborative peer-to-peer learning. So, and other gaming literacies are to identify problems, to collaborate, to have a critical reflection, to engage in system thinking, and to create, to solve problems creatively, and even innovation. That's part of that whole block. And to me, what they refer to as system thinking is what Buckminster Fuller back in the day referred to as comprehensive anticipatory thinking and problem solving. And the school uses 4 core principles, which also resonate strongly, and this is today and will be tomorrow, 4 core game principles. The first one is everyone can participate. That's quite exactly the same. The second one is the challenge is constant. So you have to imagine that if not all of you are gamers, a game space is basically a space where constantly obstacles are put in your way, and it's really challenging and it's always changing. But it's put in such a way that the player or the student feels encouraged to overcome that obstacle and to find ways to deal with it. So that's that. And the third one is that the feedback is also immediate and it's ongoing. So I think that refers more to a digital sphere where, digital games, they are full of data. That's why they're, according to them, also good for learning. So the students learn, and at the same time, the teachers can assess their learning process. And it's literally, while they're playing, they learn. And the fourth one, again, very close to Buckminster Fuller, solving problems builds expertise. And it's as simple as that. You have to go, you have to fail, and you have to do, and you build up a repertoire so you can deal with unforeseen challenges. And I think they take Fuller's idea of game into the present, and they take it slightly further, because they don't just say, we need to call it a game in order to invite people. We need to do it a game in order to pick up this generation of students, and it's set, and it has become the basic structure for learning.
When you talk about education, I have to think about another example that is all about learning as well, but it originates in the art world. It's Freie, Gallery for Arts, Technology and Social Science, and it has been founded by artists Ruth Caslow and Mark Garris in 1997. And one of further field projects, Play of Place, to see here, it's from 2013, is described on their website as, a quote, an open artwork and online game-building game created by artists, programmers, and citizens to develop a collective vision for a richer, emancipated life for all beings in all places. People bring their expertise to public game jam events through two imaginative world-forming activities, drawing and play. That means Furtherfield seeks out small communities like schools or neighborhoods or inner cities and organize drawing events. They teach the participants not only how to build up scenarios and how to draw a storyboard, but they also teach them how to program a bit, and how to use HTML software that is specifically developed for this project. Yeah, normally the film will run here, but it doesn't work. Furtherfield's approach to community engagement resonates with one of Buckminster Fuller's working principles, concrete to be a trim tab mover of big ships, which essentially means small and strategically placed intervention can cause large-scale and profound change. Furtherfield uses similar strategies. Playing and drawing are two things every person does or has done once in his life or her life. Furthermore, they use Fuller's principle, think global, act local, in a more 21st century way of meaning, by embedding the neighborhood, by using content that was locally produced, doing events that are social get-togethers, so all the people meet, draw together, and the drawings the people produce during the events might have the possibility to make their producer visible in his or her complex geographic, economic, or social network. By making rules by themselves, the participants learn something about legitimations and exclusions that they may have taken as given or natural before. And they make themselves visible on their very personal maps, because they sometimes draw maps and they use stuff from their environment. The lesson is do little, but do something at least. Take initiative for yourself, you cannot learn less. As Furtherfield provides an online archive for the Play Your Place project, it is possible to act from everywhere. So this content you have there, the drawing content, you can have access to if you have an access to internet, and you are able to participate and play the games or create new ones from everywhere around the world. There's only a small gap between virtual and analog left. Local and global are mixed up. through technical means like the internet and open source. I'm convinced that Player Place is a great platform to collaboratively develop new questions or to come up with utopian or dystopian visions. But despite all, I'm still wondering if this game can really change the participants' reality, or better verbalized, if it's possible in general to change reality through games in a sustainable way.
Challenge. Yeah, Buckminster, he was convinced that you can, and that it must happen, that everyone can win. And part of that was also to develop this game, to prepare for it. And he was convinced that you could redesign the world to make that happen for 100% of mankind. But as we know, he designed the game, and the world didn't change with all its complexities. But I think by engaging with the game, one could really deal with the issues that seemed larger than life, and felt entitled and encouraged to put out a proposal for an alternative future. And I think that brings me back. Utopia was mentioned a couple times, and the question that what is utopia if not this giant vision that sets a string of events and creative processes into motion in order to get there. And even though you might not get there, you will get somewhere. And I think also that it's important to articulate this vision. It might be fiction at first, and Buckminster Fuller is a great example. I mean, he made a lot of stuff up, which turned out to be true later, or what was developed. But in order to change reality, you have to propose an alternative, a new vision that makes the old one or old ones eventually obsolete. And as mentioned before, it helps to make it tangible, to visualize it, that vision. And the change has to come from taking action. And sometimes taking action starts with simply playing a game. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions?
Hello, and thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. Have you ever played the World game? Yeah? Go ahead.
I don't want to.
I'm saying I'm old enough to have heard Buckminster Fuller speak for 8 hours and played the World game.
Oh, wonderful.
And there is one thing that I really love where you're taking this. But in terms of Fuller and Utopia, he really spoke about one concept, that the Malthus, the economist, that the world was at war always because of the distribution of resources. And he thought by playing the game and using the computers of the day that you could redistribute that resource and end war. And that he could show people that there was enough to go around. And that he brought that up over and over again, that people had this fantasy that there was only so much and it would run out. Supply and demand, scarcity. So I thought that was really interesting where you've taken the notion of gaming, the idea of the personal game. It's very, very exciting, and I'm sure he would have really enjoyed it. So I have no question. I just, thank you.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. That's wonderful that I know now someone who played the game.
You do it with your shoes off, and you basically live. The board is as big as this room,
yeah,
if not bigger.
Yeah.
And everybody was very smelled like patchouli oil.
Okay.
Any more questions? Am I not seeing something? All right, then I guess this was the day. Thank you. Thank you very much all for being here, for handling the thin air that we have here right now and being here for so many hours. And I hope you had a very enlightening day with a lot of great speakers. Thanks to everyone who participated and who was here.